When a man who once killed the innocent meets a nun being hunted through a blizzard in 1895, can God forgive what they must do next? The sound cut through the Ozark wilderness like a blade. Gunfire. Then voices, rough and eager, carried on the winter wind through the pines. "Find that bitch! Gideon's paying $500. Sister Catherine O'Malley stumbled through snow that rose past her knees, her black habit soaked and heavy, the white veil torn and flapping behind her like a surrender flag she refused to wave. Her lungs burned. Every breath was a prayer she didn't have time to finish. Behind her, maybe 100 yards back, the dogs were closing in. She could hear them now, baying through the storm, their handlers shouting encouragement. 4 men, maybe 5, all of them killers sent by a man who owned half of Missouri and wanted to own the rest, no matter who had to die. Catherine's foot caught on a hidden root. She went down hard, face first into the snow. For a moment, the cold felt almost welcoming. She was so tired, so scared. The weight of the child on her back, 9-year-old Danny Walsh, felt like it might crush her into the frozen earth. "Sister Kate," the boy whimpered against her shoulder. "I can't feel my feet." "Hold on, Danny. Just hold on." Catherine forced herself up. Her hands were numb inside her wet gloves. She couldn't feel her face anymore. Somewhere behind them, Danny's mother Rebecca was struggling to keep pace, her own exhaustion written in every labored step. This morning felt like a lifetime ago. 12 hours earlier, Catherine had been kneeling in the chapel of St. Agnes Convent, watching dawn light filter through the simple glass windows. The small stone building sat in a valley 20 miles from Springfield Hollow, home to 8 nuns who lived their lives in prayer and service. Catherine had been there since she was 18, 6 years now, seeking peace after her father died in what everyone called an accident at Blackwell's mine. She knew better. Even at 18, she knew. That morning, the peace shattered when Rebecca Walsh came stumbling through the snow to the convent door, half carrying her son. The boy's leg was bleeding through makeshift bandages, his face pale with shock and pain. Mother Beatrice, the convent's elder at 68 years old, took one look at the wound and knew they were in trouble. "What happened?" the old nun asked, her voice gentle despite the concern in her eyes. Rebecca's answer came in broken whispers. "Last night, Danny saw them at the mine. Saw Jack Murphy cutting the cable on the main shaft. 3 men died when it gave way this morning. Danny was there. He saw everything." Catherine felt ice form in her stomach. Gideon Blackwell, the name everyone whispered but no one dared say aloud. The richest man in 3 counties, owner of Blackwell Mining, a man who crushed anyone who stood in his way. "If Blackwell knows Danny saw," Rebecca continued, her voice breaking, "he'll kill us both." Mother Beatrice made her decision without hesitation. "Catherine, you'll take them over the mountain to Springfield. Find Marshall Brooks. He's a good man. He'll help." Catherine had stared at the old woman. "Mother, I've never been more than 5 miles from the convent." "I know, child." Mother Beatrice took Catherine's hands in her own weathered ones. "But faith isn't just prayer. Sometimes it's action. Sometimes it's putting one foot in front of the other when you're afraid. Can you do that?" Catherine thought of her father, thought of the lies told about his death, thought of all the families like Rebecca's, crushed under Blackwell's boot. "Yes, Mother, I can." They left at midday thinking the storm would cover their tracks. For the first 10 miles, it worked. Then the dogs picked up their scent. Now running through the blizzard, Catherine could hear them getting closer. The men's voices were clearer now, confident they had their prey cornered. A shot rang out. The bullet struck a tree trunk 3 feet to Catherine's left, sending bark exploding into the snow. Rebecca screamed. Catherine pulled Danny closer and ran. Then she saw it. Through the swirling white, a dark shape, solid, real, a cabin. "There!" Catherine gasped, pointing. "Rebecca, run!" They crashed through the last 50 yards of forest. Behind them, the dogs were so close, Catherine could hear their panting, could almost feel their breath on her neck. 20 yards from the cabin, 10 yards. Another gunshot, this one closer. The bullet hissed past Catherine's ear. 5 yards. The largest wolf dog she'd ever seen burst from the trees, its massive jaws open, going straight for Danny on her back. Catherine tried to turn, to shield the boy with her body, knowing it was too late, knowing they were about to die. The gunshot came from a different direction. The dog dropped mid-leap, dead before it hit the snow. From the darkness between the pines, a figure emerged, tall, broad across the shoulders, moving with the easy grace of someone who belonged to this wilderness. A long rifle rested in his hands, smoke still rising from the barrel. His face was mostly hidden behind a thick, dark beard, but his eyes caught what little light remained, cold and blue as winter ice. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough, like gravel shifting in a stream bed. "Follow me. Now." Catherine hesitated for only a heartbeat. Behind them, the men were shouting, crashing through the brush. She could hear them loading their weapons. "Who are you?" she managed. The stranger was already moving toward the cabin, someone with the only shelter for 10 miles. "You want to argue or you want to live?" Another bullet whined past them. "We go," Rebecca gasped. The stranger led them through what looked like random trees but was clearly a path only he could see. In seconds, they were at the cabin's door. He pushed it open and stepped aside. Inside, they stumbled into warmth and firelight. The cabin was small but well kept. A stone fireplace, already burning, furs on the floor, rifles mounted on the wall. Everything spoke of someone who knew how to survive alone. The stranger followed them in and barred the door with a heavy timber. Then he moved to the window, watching the forest. "They'll search," he said quietly, "but they won't find this place. Not in this storm. I know how to hide." Catherine lowered Danny carefully onto a rough wooden bench near the fire. The boy was shaking, his lips blue with cold. Rebecca collapsed beside her son, sobbing with relief and exhaustion. The stranger set his rifle aside and knelt beside Danny without a word. His movements were surprisingly gentle as he examined the leg wound, his large scarred hands careful not to cause more pain. "This needs cleaning and fresh bandages," he said. "The bleeding stopped, but infection is starting." "I can help," Catherine said quickly. "I know some medicine." The stranger glanced at her, really looking at her for the first time. His eyes lingered on her habit, the traditional garb of a Catholic nun, now soaked and torn. "You're far from any church, sister." "We had good reason to run." He studied her for another moment, then stood and moved to a shelf, returning with clean cloth, a bottle of whiskey, and dried herbs Catherine recognized as golden seal, a natural antiseptic. "Then we'd better make sure you survive." He handed her the supplies. "You know what to do with these?" Catherine nodded. Her father had been a miner. Accidents were common. She'd learned young how to treat wounds, how to fight infection with what little they had. As she worked on Danny's leg, cleaning the wound with whiskey while Rebecca held her son's hand, Catherine watched the stranger from the corner of her eye. He moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, adding wood to the fire, heating water, pulling down blankets from a high shelf. Danny whimpered as Catherine applied the golden seal paste. "Brave boy," the stranger said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "The worst is over." "Are you a hunter?" Danny asked through his pain, trying to be brave. The corner of the man's mouth moved, almost a smile. "Yes, son." "Do you hunt bears?" "Sometimes, but bears are more polite than the men out there." Catherine found herself making a sound, half laugh, half sob. The stranger's eyes flicked to her and she saw something shift in them. Recognition of shared humanity, perhaps, or just surprise that she could still find anything funny. "What's your name?" she asked as she tied off the bandage. He hesitated as if the answer cost him something. "Nathaniel Hartwell. Most people called me Nate before." "Before what?" "Before I came here, before I decided being alone was safer than being around people." Rebecca looked up, tears still streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mr. Hartwell. Thank you for not leaving us to die." Nate's jaw tightened. He turned away, busying himself with the fire. "Storm will last 2 more days," he said, not looking at them. "You can't travel. You'll stay here until it passes." It wasn't quite a question, but Catherine answered anyway. "We're grateful." As night fell and the storm howled around the cabin, Nate prepared a simple meal of rabbit stew. The 3 refugees ate hungrily, warmth slowly returning to their bones. Danny fell asleep almost immediately after eating, exhausted and finally safe. Rebecca curled around her son, her own eyes closing within minutes. Catherine sat by the fire, her habit steaming as it dried. Her hands still shook, but whether from cold or delayed shock, she couldn't say. Nate poured hot tea into 2 tin cups, offered her one. Pine needle tea, not fancy but warm. She took it gratefully. Better than anything I've had all day. He sat across from her, separated by the fire. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the wind screamed like something alive and angry. I've never been hunted before, Catherine said quietly. Never had men trying to kill me. You get used to it. She looked at him sharply. I don't want to get used to it. For the first time, something like approval crossed his face. That's good. Don't ever get used to evil. The day you do, you become part of it. There was weight in those words. History. Catherine wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his expression told her the door was closing. Why do you live out here alone? She asked instead. Nate stared into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because there are things I need to forget, things I can't forget, so I try to disappear instead. Does it work? No. The honesty of it struck Catherine harder than any confession she'd heard in 6 years of convent life. This man, whoever he was, carried pain so deep it had driven him into the wilderness to die slowly, alone. I don't think God wants us to disappear, she said softly. Nate's laugh was bitter. God and I parted ways a long time ago, sister. Maybe, but you saved us tonight. That's not the act of a man God has abandoned. That's the act of a man who still has goodness in him, whether he wants to admit it or not. Nate stood abruptly. You should rest. Tomorrow will be hard. He moved to the far corner of the cabin, laying out a bedroll for himself, keeping watch by the door. Catherine understood she'd touched something raw, something he wasn't ready to examine. She settled onto the furs near Danny and Rebecca, exhaustion finally overwhelming fear. As she drifted towards sleep, she heard Nate's voice so quiet she almost missed it. Thank you, sister. For what? For still believing people can be good. The next morning, Catherine woke to find Nate already gone, out checking his trap lines despite the storm. Danny was better, his fever down, color returning to his face. Rebecca held her son close, whispering prayers of gratitude. Catherine stood and looked around the cabin in daylight. It was sparse but clean, everything in its place. A man's refuge, built to keep the world out. But something caught her eye. A wooden box under Nate's bedroll, one corner visible where the blanket had shifted. She should have looked away, should have respected his privacy. But something pulled at her, an instinct born of 6 years watching her father's killers walk free. Catherine glanced at Rebecca and Danny, both still sleeping. She knelt beside the bedroll and carefully pulled the box free. Inside were papers, old letters, a tintype photograph of a family, the kind miners' families had taken when they could afford it. And beneath everything, a leather journal. Catherine opened it with trembling hands. The pages were filled with neat handwriting, dates, names, locations. At first, she couldn't make sense of it. Then she saw a name she recognized. O'Malley family, April 15, 1889, coal strike suppression, 4 casualties. The world tilted. O'Malley was her family name, her father's name. April 1889 was when he died, when 3 others died with him in what everyone was told was an accident during the strike. Catherine flipped through more pages, more names, more dates, more casualties. This wasn't a diary. This was a record, a confession, a record of killing. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the journal. She forced herself to read more, found references to Gideon Blackwell, found the truth she'd suspected for 6 years. Her father hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered. Murdered by strikebreakers sent to crush the union organizing. Murdered by men like... The cabin door opened. Nate stood in the doorway, snow dusting his shoulders, fresh meat hanging from his belt. His eyes went immediately to Catherine, kneeling by his bedroll, the journal in her hands. All the color drained from his face. Sister Kate, he said, his voice hollow, put that down. But Catherine couldn't move, couldn't think, could only stare at the man who had saved her life last night, the man who might have destroyed it 6 years ago. You worked for Blackwell, she whispered. You killed strikers. You killed my father. Nate closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Catherine saw something she hadn't seen before. Not just pain, guilt, soul deep and crushing. Yes, he said simply. I did. Outside Springfield Hollow, in an office paneled with expensive wood bought with miner's blood, Gideon Blackwell sat behind his desk and listened to Jack Murphy's report. Lost them in the storm, boss, Murphy said, his scarred face impassive. But we'll find them when it clears. Gideon Blackwell was 48 years old, silver-haired and well-dressed, a man who'd built an empire on knowing when to be charming and when to be ruthless. Right now, ruthless was required. The boy saw you cut that cable? Yeah, little bastard was watching from the upper gallery. Didn't see him until too late. And now he's with a nun, running to Springfield, I assume, to Marshall Brooks. Brooks is a problem, Murphy agreed. He's not on the payroll. Blackwell leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. That boy testifies. I lose everything. The mine, the contracts, possibly my freedom. He paused. Find them, Murphy. Find them and kill them. The body of his mother, the nun. All of them. What about the convent? Other nuns might know. A cold smile crossed Blackwell's face. If the nun isn't back in 3 days, burn it. Send a message. No one stands against me. Not minors, not mothers, not women of God. Murphy nodded and turned to leave. Murphy? Blackwell's voice stopped him at the door. Don't fail me again. I don't accept failure. Understood, boss. Back at the cabin, Catherine stood with the journal still in her hands, facing the man who'd admitted to killing her father. Nate hadn't moved from the doorway. He looked like a man waiting for execution, resigned to whatever judgment came. How? Catherine's voice cracked. How could you? Nate slowly set down the meat and closed the door. When he spoke, his voice was flat, dead. 6 years ago, I was a different man. Blackwell hired me as security, said there was trouble at the mines, agitators causing problems. I believed him, or I didn't care. I needed the money and I was good with a gun. He moved to the fire, not looking at her. Your father, Patrick O'Malley, was organizing the miners, trying to get them fair wages, safe conditions. Blackwell wanted him stopped, sent me and 3 others to his home one night. We were supposed to scare him, show force. Catherine felt tears burning down her cheeks. But you killed him. Someone fired first. I still don't know who. It all happened so fast. When the smoke cleared, 4 people were dead. Your father, 2 other miners, and his voice broke. And a 7-year-old boy, Tommy Wright. He was the son of one of my men. Followed his father to see the action. Caught a stray bullet. Died in my arms. Nate finally turned to face her. His eyes were wet. I could have stayed. Could have fought the charges. But when I saw that boy's mother, saw what I'd taken from her, I couldn't. Blackwell was ready to pin everything on me anyway. Said I went rogue, acted alone. I let him. Ran to these mountains to die slowly because I didn't have the courage to do it quickly. Rebecca had woken during the confession. She held Danny close, watching with wide eyes. Catherine's mind reeled. The man who saved them was the man who'd destroyed her life. The man who'd shown them kindness had killed her father. But he hadn't fired the shot that killed her father. And the guilt in his eyes was real. 6 years of self-imposed exile, living in the wilderness, waiting to die. That was his penance, America. You should have stayed, Catherine said, her voice shaking. You should have fought, told the truth. I know. My father deserved justice. I know. All those families deserve the truth. I know. Nate sank onto the bench, his head in his hands. I know. I've known for 6 years. Every day I know. And every day I'm too much of a coward to go back and make it right. Catherine looked at the journal in her hands. Evidence. Proof of Blackwell's crimes. Proof that could bring down the man who'd terrorized her community for years. She thought of Mother Beatrice's words. Faith is action. Blackwell is still doing this, she said slowly. Still killing miners. Still covering it up. Danny saw Murphy cut that cable. 3 more men are dead. How many more will die if we do nothing? Nate looked up at her, confusion and hope warring in his expression. You want justice for your father? Catherine's voice grew stronger. You want to make this right? Then help us. Help us get to Springfield. Help us bring down Blackwell. Tell the truth, finally. They'll hang me. Maybe, but at least you'll die having done something good, something that matters. Catherine stepped closer. You saved us last night. You can save others. That's redemption, Nathaniel Hartwell. Not hiding, not dying slowly, actually doing something to balance the scales. Rebecca spoke up, her voice quiet but firm. The sister is right. You're not the same man who came to my husband's funeral 6 years ago. I can see it. You've changed. Changing doesn't erase what I did. No, Catherine agreed, but it means something. It means you're not beyond saving. Nate sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Finally, he raised his head. If I do this, I'm a dead man. Either Blackwell kills me or the law hangs me. Then die for something that matters, Catherine said quietly. Something shifted in Nate's eyes. After 6 years of running from his past, maybe he was finally ready to face it. All right, he said. When the storm breaks, we go to Springfield together. And I tell the truth. All of it. Catherine felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. She wasn't ready for that. But maybe the beginning of understanding. The first step towards something that might someday become redemption. Thank you, she said. Nate stood and moved to the window, looking out at the endless white. Don't thank me yet, sister. The hard part hasn't even started. He was right. Neither of them knew just how hard it would become. The storm broke on the third morning, leaving the Ozark Mountains wrapped in silence, so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Nate stood at the cabin window, watching dawn paint the snow gold and pink, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt anything close to hope. Behind him, Catherine was checking Danny's wound one final time. The boy had recovered remarkably well, his fever gone, his leg healing clean. Children were resilient in ways that shamed men like Nate, men who'd spent years wallowing in guilt instead of doing something about it. We should leave within the hour, Nate said without turning. The snow will be hard-packed now, easier to travel, but Blackwell's men will be moving too. How far to Springfield? Rebecca asked. She'd barely slept, her eyes constantly on her son, as if looking away might make him disappear. 20 miles through the mountains. If we push hard, we can make it by nightfall. Nate finally turned to face them. But we need to be ready. Those men hunting you won't have given up. Catherine met his eyes steadily. Something had changed between them since she'd discovered his journal. Not forgiveness. The wound was too fresh, the pain too deep. But maybe understanding, maybe the recognition that broken people sometimes got chances to become whole again, if they were brave enough to trip on. Then we'd better prepare, she said. Nate moved to the wall where his rifles hung. He took down a small revolver, checked the cylinder, then held it out to Catherine. You know how to use this? She stared at the weapon like it was a snake. I'm a nun. You're a woman being hunted by killers. God will understand. When she didn't take it, Nate's voice softened. Sister Kate, I can't protect all three of you if they catch us in the open. You need to be able to defend yourself. Defend Danny. Catherine's hand trembled as she reached for the gun. It was heavier than she expected, cold and brutal in its simplicity. Everything about it felt wrong in her hand. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You won't know until you have to. Nate stepped closer, showing her how to hold it, how to aim. Don't think. Don't hesitate. If someone threatens Danny, you point and you pull the trigger. That's all. That's murder. That's survival. There's a difference, Weston. Catherine wanted to argue, wanted to quote scripture about turning the other cheek, about the sanctity of life. But she remembered the men chasing them through the storm, remembered the bullet that had nearly taken her head off. Those men wouldn't hesitate. They'd kill her, kill Danny, kill Rebecca, and sleep soundly that night. All right, she said, show me. They practiced for 20 minutes, Catherine firing at a tree trunk outside until her hands stopped shaking quite so badly. She'd never hit what she aimed at, but she could at least make the gun go off without flinching. Danny watched with wide eyes. Sister Kate, you're like Annie Oakley. Despite everything, Catherine smiled. I don't think Annie Oakley was this bad a shot, sweetheart. You're doing fine, Nate said, and there was something in his voice that made her think he meant more than just the shooting. They packed quickly, dried meat, blankets, ammunition. Nate moved with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years preparing to run at a moment's notice. As he worked, Catherine noticed the journal was gone from its hiding place. She didn't ask what he'd done with it. Some things didn't need to be spoken. Just before they left, Nate knelt in front of Danny. "Listen to me, son. The next few hours are going to be hard. Cold, maybe scary. But you're tough, aren't you?" Danny nodded, trying to be brave. "Good. You stick close to your mama and sister Kate. Do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." Nate ruffled the boy's hair, and Catherine saw something crack in his expression. Regret, maybe, or the ghost of the child he'd held while life bled out of him 6 years ago. Then he stood, the moment passing. "Let's move." The journey started well enough. Nate led them along a path only he could see, weaving between trees and over frozen streams with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of this wilderness. The morning sun made the snow sparkle like diamonds, and for a little while Catherine could almost forget they were running for their lives. But Nate never forgot. His hands stayed near his rifle, his eyes constantly scanning the forest. He was a man who'd learned to expect violence, to prepare for it, to meet it head-on when it came. They'd covered maybe 5 miles when Nate suddenly stopped, his head tilting like a wolf catching a scent. "What is it?" Catherine whispered. "Tracks, fresh, horses, maybe an hour old." He knelt, examining the snow with expert eyes. "4 riders, heading the same direction we are." Rebecca's face went white. "Blackwell's men? Who else would be out here after a storm like that?" Nate stood, his jaw tight. "They're between us and Springfield. Probably figured we'd head that way, set up an ambush along the main trail." "So what do we do?" Nate thought for a moment. "We go around. There's another route, harder, but it'll keep us off the main path. Add a few hours, but it's safer." They changed direction, pushing deeper into the wilderness. The temperature was dropping as the sun climbed higher, a peculiar cruelty of mountain weather. Catherine's feet were numb despite her boots, and she could see Danny shivering despite the blankets wrapped around him. "How much farther?" Rebecca asked, her voice thin with exhaustion. "Another 10 miles, we'll make it." But they didn't. The wolves came at dusk. Catherine heard them first, a low howling that raised the hair on her neck. She'd heard wolves before, distant songs on quiet nights at the convent, but this was different. This was close, and getting closer. Nate heard them too. "Cave. Now, there's one about 200 yards ahead." They ran. Catherine had thought she was too tired to run anymore, but fear gave her new strength. She could hear the wolves behind them now, not howling anymore, but making a worse sound. The sound of predators closing in on prey. Danny whimpered against her back. Rebecca sobbed as she ran, and still the wolves came closer. The cave appeared like salvation, a dark mouth in the hillside. Nate shoved them inside and immediately started gathering deadfall for a fire. His hands moved with desperate speed, striking flint, coaxing flame from dry moss. The fire caught just as the first wolf appeared at the cave mouth. It was massive, gray and white, with eyes that caught the firelight and threw it back like mirrors. Behind it, Catherine could see others. 5, 6, a whole pack. Nate raised his rifle. "Get behind me." The wolves circled, patient and deadly. They weren't starving, Catherine realized. They were hunting for sport, or territory, or some instinct older than mankind. The alpha wolf, the massive gray, took a step into the cave. Nate fired a warning shot that sent rock chips flying near its head. The wolf didn't even flinch. "They're not afraid," Catherine breathed. "No, they're not." Another wolf, smaller and faster, darted in from the side. Nate swung the rifle, but too slow. The wolf lunged straight for Rebecca. Catherine didn't think, didn't pray, didn't hesitate. She raised the revolver Nate had given her and pulled the trigger. The sound in the enclosed cave was deafening. The bullet caught the wolf in the shoulder, spinning it sideways. It yelped and scrambled back, blood staining the snow. The pack hesitated. Nate used the moment, firing twice more into the ground in front of the alpha. "Go! Get out!" For a long moment, man and wolf stared at each other. Then the alpha turned and melted into the darkness. The pack followed. Catherine stood frozen, the gun still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. She'd just shot a living creature. She'd pulled the trigger and sent a bullet into flesh and bone, and she'd felt nothing in that moment but the need to protect. Her hands started shaking, then her arms, then her whole body. Nate gently took the gun from her. "You did good, sister. You saved her." I shot it, and I didn't even think. That's how it works. When it matters, you don't think, you just act. He guided her to sit down by the fire. "You did what you had to do." Rebecca was crying, holding Danny tight. "Thank you. Thank you, Sister Kate." But Catherine barely heard. She was staring at her hands, these hands that had held rosary beads and tended wounds, and now had pulled a trigger to cause harm. Was this who she was becoming? Was this what survival required? Nate sat beside her, close but not touching. "First time is hardest." "There shouldn't be a first time. I'm supposed to be a woman of God." "You are. You just proved it. You protected the innocent. That's more godly than any prayer." Catherine looked at him, this man who'd killed and run and hidden, now trying to comfort her. "Does it get easier?" "The shooting? Yes. Living with it after?" He shook his head. "No, it never gets easier. You just learn to carry it." They sat in silence as the fire crackled and the mountain night pressed in around them. Outside, the wolves were gone, but Catherine could still feel their presence, still see those mirror eyes in the darkness. "Tell me something," she said quietly. "Tell me something good. Something from before all this." Nate was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, I had a dog once, when I was a boy, named him Ranger. Dumbest animal you ever met, would chase his own tail for hours, but loyal. Would have died for me." "What happened to him?" "Died of old age, in his sleep, with his head on my lap. I was 17, cried like a baby." A ghost of a smile touched Nate's face. "My father said that's how you know you love something. If losing it breaks you." Catherine thought of her own father, of the breaking that had sent her to the convent. "I think your father was wise." "He was. Died in a mine collapse when I was 19. After that, I sort of drifted, took work where I could find it. Some of it good. Some of it—" He trailed off, but Catherine understood. Some of it had led him to Gideon Blackwell, to her father's door, to 6 years of self-imposed exile. "Do you think people can change?" she asked. "Really change, I mean. Not just say they're sorry, but actually become different?" Nate looked at her, and in the firelight his face showed something that might have been hope. "I don't know, Sister Kate, but I'd like to find out." They rested in the cave until midnight, then pushed on through the darkness. The wolves didn't return. But as they walked, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched, still being hunted by something more dangerous than animals. At dawn, they crested a ridge and saw Springfield Hollow spread out in the valley below. Smoke rose from chimneys. Church bells rang for morning mass. It looked peaceful, normal. "Almost there," Nate said, but his voice held no relief. They started down the slope, moving carefully on the icy ground. They were maybe a mile from town when Nate stopped so suddenly that Catherine nearly ran into him. "What is it?" He pointed. There, blocking the trail ahead, were 4 men on horseback. Even from a distance, Catherine could see the guns. "Blackwell's men," Nate said quietly. The lead rider, a big man with a scar running down his face, urged his horse forward. His voice carried clearly in the cold air. "That's far enough, Hartwell. We know it's you." Nate's hand moved to his rifle, but he didn't raise it. "Not yet." "Murphy, figured it'd be you." "Boss wants the boy. Give him to us, we'll let you walk away." "We both know that's a lie." Jack Murphy laughed. "Yeah, but I had to try." He raised his hand and the other 3 men spread out, surrounding them. "This is how it's going to be. You give us the kid and the women, quick and clean, or we take them and you die slow, your choice." Catherine felt ice form in her stomach. 4 armed men, one of Nate, and she had a gun with 5 bullets left and hands that still shook. "You don't have to do this, Murphy," Nate called. "The boy's a witness. Let him testify. Let the truth come out." "Truth don't pay my bills, Hartwell. Blackwell does." Murphy's grin was ugly. "Besides, you're wanted too. Heard about what you did 6 years back. Killing those miners. You're gonna hang anyway." "Maybe, But not before I take you with me. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Murphy's grin faded. Sister Kate, Nate said quietly, not taking his eyes off the gunman. When I start shooting, you run. Don't look back. Get Danny to town. Find Marshall Brooks. Tell him everything. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. Then everything happened at once. Nate raised his rifle and fired in one smooth motion. Murphy's horse reared, throwing him. The other men went for their guns. Nate was already moving, running toward cover, firing again. Catherine grabbed Danny and ran, Rebecca right behind her. Gunfire erupted, bullets kicking up snow and dirt. She heard men shouting, horses screaming. Behind her, Nate was fighting 3-1, and she was running away. They made it maybe 50 yards before one of Murphy's men cut them off. He was young, maybe 20, with scared eyes and a shaking gun pointed right at Danny. Stop! Stop or I shoot! Catherine stopped. Rebecca whimpered. Danny trembled against her. The young gunman looked uncertain. I don't want to hurt nobody, but Murphy said bring the boy. Please, Rebecca begged. He's just a child. I know, I'm sorry. He stepped closer, reaching for Danny, and Catherine knew with absolute certainty that if she let him take the boy, Danny would never be seen alive again. The revolver was heavy in her pocket. She pulled it out before she could think about it. The young gunman's eyes went wide. Don't, please. I don't want to die. Then leave. Now. Ride away and don't look back. His gun shook worse. I can't. Murphy'll kill me. I'll kill you if you touch this boy. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen. Then the young man made his choice. He started to raise his gun. Catherine pulled the trigger. The bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He dropped his gun and fell, clutching the wound, screaming. Catherine stood there, smoke curling from the barrel, and felt something inside her break. Or maybe complete. She wasn't sure anymore. Behind them, the gunfire had stopped. She turned to see Nate walking toward them, blood on his sleeve, but alive. 2 bodies lay in the snow. Murphy was nowhere to be seen. Nate looked at the wounded young man, then at Catherine. You all right? She nodded, not trusting her voice. The others? Murphy got away. 1 dead, 1 ran. Nate knelt beside the young gunman. You're lucky, boy. Sister Kate could have killed you. Shows mercy you don't deserve. The young man was crying now. Please, I need a doctor. You'll get one in Springfield, after you tell the marshal everything you know about Blackwell's operation. Nate stood. Can you walk? I think so. Then start walking. We'll be right behind you. They continued toward Springfield, their unlikely group now including a wounded hired gun who sobbed with every step. The sun was fully up now, bright and cold. In the distance, Catherine could see people moving in the streets of the town. Almost there, almost safe. But as they walked, Catherine could feel the weight of the gun in her pocket, could feel how it had changed her, how crossing that line from victim to fighter had altered something fundamental in her soul. Sister? Danny's small voice interrupted her thoughts. Yes, sweetheart? Are you still a nun if you shoot people? Catherine had no answer. She looked at Nate, but he was watching the town ahead, his face unreadable. Maybe she'd find out in Springfield. Maybe Marshall Brooks would have answers. Or maybe some questions didn't have answers, and she'd have to live with the uncertainty. Behind them, somewhere in those mountains, Jack Murphy was riding hard toward Gideon Blackwell with news of their approach. The real fight hadn't even started yet. But for the first time in 6 years, Catherine O'Malley wasn't running from truth. She was running toward it. Springfield Hollow looked like a town caught between 2 eras. The old wooden storefronts leaned against newer brick buildings, and the main street was half mud, half cobblestone, as if the town couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Church spires rose at either end like bookends holding everything together. Catherine had never seen it look so beautiful. They stumbled into town just after noon, exhausted and blood-stained. The wounded gunman barely conscious between Nate and Rebecca. People stopped on the boardwalk to stare. Women pulled their children close. Men reached for weapons they weren't wearing. A nun, a mountain man, a mother and child, and a bleeding outlaw. They must have looked like the aftermath of a war. Marshal's office, Nate said, his voice rough with fatigue. 2 blocks down. They made it halfway before a door opened and a man in a badge stepped out. Marshal Henry Brooks was in his 50s, gray at the temples, with the weathered face of someone who'd seen too much and believed too little. His hand rested on his gun as he took in the scene. "What in God's name happened to you people?" "We need help, Marshal," Catherine said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "We need protection, and we have information about Gideon Blackwell." Brooks' eyes sharpened at the name. He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze lingering longest on Nate, as if trying to place him. Then he gestured toward his office. "Inside, now, before someone sees you and word gets to Blackwell." The marshal's office was small but clean, with a wood stove throwing heat and wanted posters covering one wall. Brooks kicked a chair toward the wounded man. "Sit there before you bleed on my floor more than you already have." He looked at Catherine. "You first, sister. Start from the beginning." So she did. She told him about Danny witnessing the cable being cut, about Jack Murphy and the 3 dead miners, about running to the convent and Mother Beatrice sending them over the mountain. She told him about the chase through the storm, about Nate saving them, about the wolves and the ambush and the 2 men dead in the snow behind them. She didn't tell him about Nate's past, not yet. That was his story to tell. When she finished, Brooks sat back in his chair. "That's a hell of a tale, sister. You got any proof?" Danny spoke up, his voice small but clear. "I saw it, sir. I saw Mr. Murphy cut the cable. I watched it fall. I heard the men screaming." The wounded gunman groaned. "It's true, all of it. Blackwell pays us to keep the miners scared, keep them from organizing. Murphy's done it before, lots of times." Brooks turned his attention to the man. "You willing to testify to that?" "If you keep me alive long enough, yeah." The marshal's eyes moved to Nate, who'd been standing silently by the door. "And you, I know you. Took me a minute, but I know your face. You're Nathaniel Hartwell. Wanted for the O'Malley killing 6 years back." Nate didn't flinch. "Yes, sir, I am. You're under arrest." "I know." Nate stepped forward, hands out. "But before you lock me up, you need to know something. Gideon Blackwell ordered those killings. He's been ordering killings for years. I can testify to all of it. Names, dates, locations. I kept records." Brooks studied him for a long moment. "Why now? Why come forward after 6 years?" Nate glanced at Catherine, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or just shared exhaustion. "Because I'm tired of running, and because these people deserve justice more than I deserve to hide." And the marshal was quiet, thinking. Finally, he stood. "Here's how this is going to work. Hartwell, you're technically under arrest, but I'm not putting you in a cell yet. I need you alive to testify, and if Blackwell finds out you're here, he'll send every gun he's got. Sister, you and the boy and his mother are under my protection. Nobody touches you." "What about Blackwell?" Catherine asked. "That's the problem. He's got lawyers, money, influence. Your word against his, even with these 2 testifying, might not be enough. I need evidence, hard evidence, financial records, communications, something that ties him directly to these crimes." "I know where they are," Nate said. "His office. There's a safe behind a painting of his father. He keeps everything there. Thinks he's untouchable. Can't get a warrant without probable cause. Judge Henderson is in Blackwell's pocket anyway." Catherine felt frustration rising. "So we just wait while he sends more men?" "No." Brooks moved to a cabinet and pulled out a bottle of whiskey. "We get creative, but first let me get Doc Hayes to look at these wounded people. You all look half dead." Dr. Samuel Hayes was a tired man who'd seen too many mining accidents and not enough healing. He came within the hour carrying a worn leather bag that smelled of carbolic and whiskey. He examined Danny first, nodding approvingly at Catherine's work. "You did well, sister. The boy will be fine. Keep the wound clean, change the dressing daily." Then he turned to Nate, who'd been shot in the upper arm during the ambush. The bullet had passed through cleanly, but the wound needed stitching. "This is going to hurt," Doc Hayes said, threading his needle. "I've had worse." As the doctor worked, Catherine watched Nate's face. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just stared at the far wall with the stoic acceptance of a man who believed he deserved the pain. "You were lucky," Doc Hayes said as he tied off the last stitch. "Another inch to the left, and you'd have bled out in those mountains." "Luck seems to be following me lately," Nate replied, his eyes finding Catherine's again. The doctor finished with the wounded gunman, who'd given his name as Billy Marsh and seemed eager to cooperate if it meant staying alive. Then he turned to Catherine. You look exhausted, sister. When's the last time you slept? I don't remember. Well, you need rest. All of you do. He looked at Brooks. They staying here? For now, it's the safest place until we figure out our next move. After Doc Hayes left, Brooks produced blankets and bedrolls. There's a back room you can use, sister. It's not much, but it's warm and private. Catherine wanted to argue that she should stay alert, stay ready, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. Rebecca and Danny were already half asleep on the floor near the stove. Thank you, Marshall. She started toward the back room, then paused and looked at Nate. You should rest too. Someone needs to keep watch. The Marshal can do that. You're wounded and exhausted. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. A hint of something that might have been amusement crossed Nate's face. Bossy for a nun. Former nun, apparently. The words were out before Catherine could stop them. The room went quiet. Brooks and Nate both stared at her. What do you mean, former? Brooks asked. Catherine took a breath. I mean, I've shot 2 living creatures in the past day and a half. I've lied. I've deceived. I've felt hatred in my heart. I don't know if I'm still worthy to wear this habit. Sister Kate, Danny's sleepy voice came from the floor. You saved us. That's what Jesus would do. Out of the mouths of babes. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. Now sleep. She went to the back room and collapsed onto the narrow cot without even removing her torn and dirty habit. Sleep took her instantly, deep and dreamless. When she woke, it was dark outside and voices were coming from the main office. She sat up, disoriented, and realized she'd slept for hours. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. She smoothed her habit as best she could and went to the door. Through it, she could hear Nate and Brooks talking. You really going to testify? Brooks was asking. I gave my word. You know they'll hang you. Even if we bring down Blackwell, you'll still hang for your part in the O'Malley killings. A long pause. Then Nate's voice, quiet but firm. I know, but maybe that's justice too. And the sister? She knows? She knows everything. She's the one who convinced me to come forward. She must be one hell of a woman. She is. Catherine felt heat rise in her cheeks. She pushed the door open and both men looked up. You're awake, Brooks said. Good, we need to talk strategy. Over cold beef and bread that someone had brought from the general store, they laid out their options. None of them were good. Blackwell will have heard by now that you made it to town, Brooks said. He'll be planning his response. Could come at us with lawyers claiming you're all lying. Could come at us with guns, or both. What if we force his hand? Catherine asked. What if we make this public? Let the whole town know what he's done. Most folks here depend on Blackwell's mine for their livelihood. They'll be scared to speak up. Then we make them more scared of staying silent. Catherine's voice was stronger than she felt. We tell the truth, loud, public, give them a choice between courage and cowardice. Nate was looking at her with something like admiration. You want to make a stand. I want justice for my father, for Danny's father, for all of them. Brooks shook his head. You're talking about going up against the most powerful man in 3 counties with nothing but testimony and hope. That's not a strategy, sister. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's the right thing to do. Catherine met his eyes. You became a lawman to uphold justice, didn't you, Marshall? Well, here's your chance. We can either hide and hope Blackwell doesn't kill us, or we can stand up and fight. What's it going to be, Feng? For a long moment, Brooks was silent. Then slowly he smiled. You know what? I'm getting too old for this job anyway. Might as well go out doing something that matters. So you'll help us? I'll do better than that. Tomorrow's Sunday. Whole town will be at church. We'll make our stand there. Public. Open. Let everyone hear the truth and choose their side. Blackwell won't let it happen, Nate warned. Then we'll be ready for him. Brooks stood and went to his gun cabinet. I've got friends in this town. Good people who've been afraid too long. Time to remind them what courage looks like. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Catherine woke early and for the first time in days felt something like peace. She found a basin of clean water and washed as best she could, trying to make herself presentable. Her habit was beyond repair, but a woman from the general store, Ezra Stone's wife, brought a simple black dress that fit well enough. "I heard what you're doing," Mrs. Stone said quietly. "My brother died in Blackwell's mine 3 years ago. They said it was an accident. I never believed it. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry, just make him pay." As the morning progressed, other people came. A widow whose husband had died in a cave-in, a former miner with a mangled hand, a mother who'd lost her son. One by one, they told their stories to Marshall Brooks, adding their voices to the growing chorus of testimony against Gideon Blackwell. "This is more than I hoped for," Brooks admitted. "If even half these people are willing to speak publicly, we might actually have a chance." At 10 o'clock, the church bells began to ring. Catherine stood at the marshal's office window, watching people stream toward the white clapboard building at the end of Main Street. Her heart was pounding. "You ready for this?" Nate asked. He'd cleaned up as well, shaved his beard down to stubble, put on a borrowed shirt. He looked almost civilized except for his eyes. Those still held the haunted look of a man expecting to die. "No," Catherine admitted, "but I don't think anyone's ever ready to face their fear. They just do it anyway." "That's courage, Sister Kate." "Or foolishness. Sometimes they're the same thing." Brooks came out of the back room checking his guns. "Blackwell's in town. Saw him ride in about an hour ago with 10 men. They're watching the church." "Will he try something during the service?" Rebecca asked, holding Danny close. "Not inside. Even Blackwell isn't that brazen." "But after?" Brooks shrugged. "All bets are off." They walked to the church as a group, Catherine and Rebecca in the middle, Nate and Brooks flanking them, Billy Marsh hobbling behind under guard. People on the street stopped and stared. Word had spread fast. Everyone knew something was about to happen. The church was packed. Catherine saw faces she recognized from her occasional trips to Springfield with Mother Beatrice. Saw fear and curiosity and, on some faces, hope. At the back, near the door, stood Gideon Blackwell and his men. He was exactly as Catherine had imagined. Silver hair, expensive suit, a face that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. When he saw her, he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Reverend Thomas was midway through his sermon when Marshall Brooks stood up. "Reverend, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something this congregation needs to hear. Something that can't wait." The Reverend, an elderly man who'd served Springfield for 30 years, looked uncertain. "Marshall, this is highly irregular." "So is murder, Reverend, and this town has been turning a blind eye to it for too long." A murmur ran through the congregation. Blackwell's smile faded. Brooks gestured to Catherine. "Sister Catherine O'Malley has something to say. I think you all should listen." Catherine stood on shaking legs. Every eye in the church was on her. She'd never spoken in front of so many people. Never thought she'd need to. But she thought of her father, thought of Danny, thought of all the families destroyed by one man's greed. She walked to the front of the church and turned to face them all. "My name is Catherine O'Malley," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Then stronger. "My father was Patrick O'Malley. He died 6 years ago in what you were told was an accident during a strike at Blackwell's mine. That was a lie." The murmur grew louder. Blackwell stood, his face dark. "This is slander. Marshall, I demand you stop this." "Sit down, Blackwell," Brooks said, his hand on his gun. "Let her speak." Catherine continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "My father was murdered. Murdered by men hired by Gideon Blackwell to break the strike. 3 other men died that night. Since then, how many more have died? How many accidents that weren't accidents? How many families destroyed while we all stayed silent?" She pointed at Danny. "This child witnessed Blackwell's man, Jack Murphy, cutting a cable that killed 3 miners 4 days ago. They've been hunting us ever since, trying to silence the truth. But we're here now, we're speaking. And we're asking you, all of you, how long will you let fear keep you silent?" The church was utterly quiet now. Then slowly Mrs. Stone stood. "My brother died in a cave-in 3 years ago. They said it was bad luck. But the supports had been cut to save money. I know because I saw them." Another person stood, then another. One by one, people began to rise, began to speak. Years of buried grief and rage came pouring out. Blackwell's face went from dark to pale. He turned to leave, but Brooks was there, blocking the door. "You're not going anywhere, Blackwell. These people have the right to be heard. You have no authority to hold me." "Actually, I do. Based on the testimony of multiple witnesses, I'm placing you under arrest for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and about a dozen other charges." Blackwell's men reached for their guns. Brooks' hand tightened on his. The moment hung there, balanced on a knife's edge. Then Nate stood, his voice cut through the tension like a bell. "Don't. It's over." Blackwell's eyes found him, and recognition sparked. "Hartwell, you're supposed to be dead." "I was. For 6 years I was dead. But I'm back now to tell the truth." Nate walked forward slowly, hands visible. "You ordered to attack the O'Malley home. You ordered the cable cuts. You ordered it all. And I kept records. Every order, every payment, every death. It's all written down. No one will believe a wanted criminal. They'll believe 20 witnesses. They'll believe the financial records in your safe. They'll believe their own eyes when they see what you really are." Blackwell looked around the church, saw the faces watching him, saw his power crumbling. His hand moved toward his gun. Everything happened at once. Brooks drew. Nate dove for cover. Blackwell's men went for their weapons. And Catherine O'Malley, former nun, pulled the revolver from her pocket and aimed it at the man who'd destroyed her life. "Don't," she said quietly. "Please, don't make me do this." Blackwell froze, staring down the barrel of her gun. For the first time, Catherine saw fear in his eyes. "Put it down, Blackwell," Brooks ordered. "All of you. This ends now." For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then slowly Blackwell raised his hands. It was over. The silence in the church was absolute. Even the children had stopped fidgeting. 200 people held their breath as Gideon Blackwell stood with his hands raised. Catherine's gun pointed at his chest, and the weight of 6 years of lies hung in the air, waiting to fall. Marshal Brooks moved first, his own weapon trained on Blackwell's men. Guns on the floor. Slowly. "Anyone makes a wrong move, they'll answer to me." One by one, the hired guns complied. The sound of metal hitting wood echoed through the sanctuary. Only Jack Murphy remained defiant, his hand still hovering near his holster. "Murphy," Brooks warned, "don't be stupid. I ain't going to jail for him." Murphy's scarred face twisted with sudden rage. He pointed at Blackwell. "You said we'd be protected. You said no one could touch us." "Shut your mouth," Blackwell hissed. "No, I'm done." Murphy turned to face the congregation, and Catherine saw desperation in his eyes. The desperation of a drowning man reaching for anything that might save him. "You want the truth? I'll give you the truth. Blackwell paid me $500 to cut that cable. Said the miners were getting uppity. Needed to be reminded who was in charge. Wasn't the first time either." A gasp ran through the church. Blackwell's face went from pale to crimson. "You're a dead man, Murphy." "Maybe, but I'm taking you with me." Murphy looked at Brooks. "I'll testify. To everything, the cable cuts, the beatings, the accidents that weren't accidents, all of it. Just keep me alive long enough to do it." Brooks nodded slowly. "Deal, but the gun, now." Murphy tossed his weapon to the floor. Catherine's arms were shaking from holding the revolver steady. Nate moved beside her, gently taking the gun from her hands. "You did good, sister. You can put it down now." She let him take it, her hands trembling violently once they were empty. She'd been seconds away from killing a man in a church. The thought made her knees weak. Reverend Thomas found his voice, shaky with shock. "Marshal Brooks, this is a house of God. Whatever you need to do, please take it outside." "In a minute, Reverend. First, these people deserve to hear everything." Brooks gestured to Nate. "Hartwell here has something to say. Something this town should have heard 6 years ago." Nate stood motionless for a moment, and Catherine could see the war happening behind his eyes. This was the moment, the point of no return. Once he spoke, there would be no more hiding, no more running, just truth and consequences. He walked to the front of the church, every step measured, like a man walking to his own execution. When he turned to face the congregation, his voice was steady but heavy with old grief. "My name is Nathaniel Hartwell. 6 years ago, I worked for Gideon Blackwell as security. What that really meant was I was a hired gun, an enforcer. He paused, his jaw working. On April 15th, 1889, Blackwell ordered me to go to the O'Malley home with 3 other men. Patrick O'Malley was organizing the miners, trying to get them fair wages and safe conditions. Blackwell wanted him stopped. Catherine felt tears burning down her cheeks. Hearing it spoken aloud in front of everyone made it real in a way it hadn't been before. We were supposed to scare him, show force, make him back down. Nate's voice cracked. But someone fired first. I still don't know who. When it was over, 4 people were dead. Patrick O'Malley, John Wright, Samuel Chen, and 7-year-old Tommy Wright, who'd followed his father to see what the excitement was about. A woman in the third pew let out a sob. Catherine recognized her as Mary Wright, Tommy's mother, now remarried but still wearing black. I held that boy while he died, Nate continued, his eyes distant, seeing something 6 years past. He asked me why it hurt so bad, asked me to tell his mama he was sorry for sneaking out. He died before I could answer. The church was silent except for quiet weeping. Even Blackwell's men looked uncomfortable. Blackwell blamed everything on me. Said I'd gone rogue, acted without orders. I could have fought it, could have told the truth. But when I looked at Mrs. Wright's face at her son's funeral, I couldn't. I ran instead. Hid in the mountains for 6 years like a coward while Blackwell kept killing. He turned to look at Catherine and she saw tears on his face. But I'm done running. I'm here to tell the truth and accept whatever punishment comes. Blackwell gave the orders. Murphy and men like him carried them out. I was part of it. We're all guilty. Ezra Stone stood up, his face grave. Why should we believe you? You just admitted you're a killer and a coward. You shouldn't, Nate said simply. You should believe the evidence. Blackwell keeps records of everything in his office safe. Payments to men like Murphy. Orders for jobs done. He's too arrogant to destroy them because he never thought anyone would dare look. Brooks stepped forward. Which brings us to the problem. Without a warrant, I can't search his office. And Judge Henderson won't sign one. Because Henderson is in Blackwell's pocket, someone called from the back. Probably, Brooks admitted. So here's what I'm proposing. Tomorrow morning, I'm sending a telegraph to the state capitol. To the governor's office. This is bigger than one crooked judge. But in the meantime, I'm holding Blackwell and his men on suspicion of murder based on multiple witness testimony. You can't hold me, Blackwell snarled, finding his voice again. My lawyers will have me out in an hour. Your lawyers are in Kansas City. It'll take them 2 days to get here. A lot can happen in 2 days. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. You're making a mistake, Brooks. I own this town. These people depend on me for their trees, their livelihoods. You think they'll thank you for destroying the mine? It was a calculated move, and Catherine saw it work. Fear rippled through the congregation. Blackwell was right. The mine employed half the town. Without it, Springfield Hollow would die. Mrs. Stone stood again. Is that true, Mr. Blackwell? If you go to jail, will you close the mine out of spite? I won't have to. Without my management, it'll fail within months. Then where will you all be? Catherine felt rage building in her chest. He was going to get away with it. Even now, even caught, he was using fear to maintain control. She stood. He's lying. Everyone turned to look at her. The mine won't close, Catherine continued, her voice ringing through the church. The mine belongs to the land, not to one man. If Blackwell goes to prison, the state will appoint new management. Honest management. You'll still have jobs. You will just have safe jobs. Jobs where your husbands and sons don't die because someone cut corners to save money. You don't know that, Blackwell shot back. No, but I have faith. Faith that good people, when given a choice between comfort and courage, will choose courage. Faith that this town is better than its fear. She looked around at all the faces watching her. My father died believing that workers deserve dignity, that men shouldn't have to choose between feeding their families and dying in unsafe conditions. He was right, and I won't dishonor his memory by staying silent anymore. Ezra Stone cleared his throat. Sister's right. We've been afraid too long. I say we stand with the marshal. Let the truth come out and deal with the consequences. Easy for you to say, another man called. You own the general store. You'll be fine either way. Some of us have families to feed. So did my brother, Mrs. Stone said quietly. So did Patrick O'Malley. So did all the men who died because we were too afraid to speak up. How many more have to die before we find our courage? The debate raged for another 10 minutes, voices rising and falling, fear and anger mixing in equal measure. Catherine watched it all, her heart heavy. She'd hoped that truth would be enough, that once people knew what Blackwell had done, they'd rise up in righteous fury. But life was messier than that. People had mortgages and children and very real fears about survival. Courage was easy to demand and hard to practice. Finally, Reverend Thomas raised his hands for silence. Enough. This is a church, not a town hall. Marshal Brooks, do what you need to do. The rest of us will pray for wisdom and guidance. Brooks nodded. Fair enough. Blackwell, Murphy, you're under arrest. The rest of you men, get out of town. If I see you after sundown, I'll assume you're here to cause trouble and act accordingly. He moved to handcuff Blackwell, but the mine owner jerked away. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Brooks. Probably not even in my top 10. Brooks grabbed Blackwell's arm and forced the cuffs on. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. As Brooks led the prisoners out, the congregation began to disperse, people talking in hushed, urgent voices. Catherine felt exhausted beyond measure. They'd won the first battle, but the war was far from over. Nate approached her quietly. You were magnificent. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Sister Kate. It's acting despite it. You taught me that. Before Catherine could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. They rushed to the church door and saw smoke rising from the far end of town. Fire, someone shouted. The marshal's office is on fire. Catherine's blood turned to ice. Brooks had been taking Blackwell and Murphy there. If the building was burning, she ran. Main Street was chaos. People with buckets formed a line to the town well, throwing water on the flames that were consuming the wooden building. Through the smoke, Catherine could see Brooks dragging someone out, coughing violently. Where's Blackwell? She shouted over the roar of the fire. Brooks shook his head, still coughing. Gone. Someone set this fire to cover a rescue. Murphy's still in there, unconscious from the smoke. But Blackwell's gone. How many men? Nate asked, appearing beside Catherine. I counted 4, maybe 5. They hit me from behind, knocked me out for a few seconds. By the time I came to, the place was burning. The fire brigade worked for another hour before getting the blaze under control. The marshal's office was a total loss, but they'd managed to save the buildings on either side. Murphy was pulled out alive, but barely, his face blackened with soot. Doc Hayes worked on him in the street while Brooks paced, furious with himself. I should have seen it coming, should have posted guards. You couldn't have known, Catherine said, but the words felt hollow. They'd been so close, had Blackwell in custody, and now he was gone, free to regroup and strike back. As if reading her thoughts, Nate said, he won't run. He's got too much invested here. He'll try to silence everyone who spoke against him. Then we need to move first, Catherine said. You said there are records in his office, in his safe. Can you get to them? That's breaking and entering, Brooks pointed out. So was burning down your office. Brooks considered this. If someone were to, hypothetically, break into Blackwell's office and find evidence of crimes, and that evidence were to, hypothetically, end up on my desk, I would be duty-bound to investigate. Nate smiled grimly. Hypothetically, of course. Of course. I'll need help, Nate said. Blackwell's office is in his house, and that place is a fortress. Guards, locks, probably dogs. I'll go with you, Catherine said immediately. Sister Kate, it's too dangerous. So was everything else we've done. Besides, you'll need someone to watch your back. And I'm getting quite good with a gun, apparently. Nate looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. All right, but we do this smart. Tonight, when it's dark, in and out fast. Brooks pulled them aside. I can't officially sanction this. You understand that? We understand, Catherine said. But unofficially, if you're not back by dawn, I'm coming looking for you. As night fell over Springfield Hollow, Catherine found herself in the back room of Ezra Stone's general store, changing out of her dress and into men's work clothes. Mrs. Stone had provided them without question, along with a dark coat and a cap to hide Catherine's hair. "You look like a young man," Mrs. Stone said approvingly. "Might help if you run into trouble." "I hope we don't run into any trouble at all." "Hope is good, sister, but preparation is better." The older woman pressed something into Catherine's hand. It was a small derringer, the kind wealthy women carried in their purses. "Just in case." Catherine started to protest, then stopped. She was past the point of pretending she wouldn't use a weapon if she had to. That innocence was gone, burned away in the crucible of the past week. "Thank you," she said simply. Nate was waiting outside, dressed all in black, a coil of rope over his shoulder and his rifle slung across his back. He looked at Catherine in her disguise and nodded approvingly. "Ready?" No, Catherine thought. I'll never be ready for this. "Yes," she said aloud. They slipped through the dark streets of Springfield Hollow like ghosts, keeping to shadows, avoiding the few people still out at this hour. Blackwell's house sat on a hill overlooking the town, a monument to wealth built on blood and suffering. Lights burned in several windows. Catherine counted at least 3 guards patrolling the grounds. "How do we get past them?" she whispered. Nate studied the house for a long moment. Then he pointed to a large oak tree whose branches overhung the second-story balcony. "We go over. Come on." They circled wide through the woods until they were behind the house, then approached the oak tree. Nate went up first, moving with surprising grace for such a large man. Catherine followed more awkwardly, grateful for the trousers that let her climb without tangling in skirts. The branch creaked under their combined weight as they inched toward the balcony. Below, a guard passed, lanterns swinging. Catherine held her breath until he was gone. Nate dropped lightly onto the balcony and helped Catherine down. The French doors were locked, but Nate produced a thin piece of metal and worked it into the mechanism. 30 seconds later, they were inside. The house was opulent in a way that made Catherine's stomach turn. Persian rugs, crystal chandeliers, furniture that cost more than most miners made in a year. All of it bought with blood. They crept through the hallway, Nate leading the way. He seemed to know the layout, and Catherine realized he must have been here before, back when he worked for Blackwell. The office was on the first floor, behind a heavy oak door. Nate tried the handle. Locked. "Can you pick it?" "Not this one, it's a deadbolt." He looked around, then gestured to a window. "We need to break it." "That'll bring the guards." "I know, which means we'll have about 2 minutes to get the safe open and get out. You ready?" Catherine drew the derringer Mrs. Stone had given her. "As I'll ever be." Nate wrapped his coat around his elbow and drove it through the window. Glass shattered loud in the quiet house. Shouts erupted immediately from downstairs. They climbed through the window into Blackwell's office. Nate went straight to the painting on the far wall, a portrait of a stern-looking man who must have been Blackwell's father. He ripped it down, revealing the safe behind. "Watch the door." Catherine positioned herself by the office door, the derringer raised. Her hands were steady, her heart was pounding. Then she heard it. Voices, not from the hallway, from inside the office. Behind a bookshelf on the opposite wall, lamplight spilled through a crack, a hidden door slightly ajar. "Nate," she whispered urgently, "someone's in there." 2 male voices, one she didn't recognize, and one that made her blood run cold. "Judge Henderson, you promised me this was handled, Gideon." Henderson's voice was sharp with panic. "You said the marshal's office fire would destroy everything." "It did." That was Blackwell's voice, cold and controlled. "But Hartwell's back, and he knows where the real records are." "Then we burn them, now, before Brooks gets a warrant." Catherine's mind raced. Blackwell wasn't at the mine or with his men. He was here, right here, and he was about to destroy the evidence. She caught Nate's eye. He'd heard it too. His face had gone pale. They had maybe 30 seconds before Blackwell came through that door. Nate's hands moved faster on the safe combination. He ordered, already working on the combination. Catherine positioned herself by the office door, the derringer raised. Her hands were steady. Her heart was pounding. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, voices shouting, getting closer. "Nate!" "Almost got it." The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. "Nate!" Click. The safe opened. Nate grabbed everything inside, ledgers and papers and envelopes, stuffing them into a canvas bag. The door burst open. A guard stood there, gun raised, his eyes widening when he saw them. Catherine didn't hesitate. She fired. The Derringer's crack was shockingly loud in the confined space. The bullet caught this guard high in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell backward into the hallway, his own gun clattering to the floor unfired. Catherine stood frozen, smoke curling from the small pistol, the reality of what she'd just done crashing over her. That was the third time. 3 times in less than a week she'd pulled a trigger. 3 times she had sent metal into flesh. Move! Nate grabbed her arm, the bag of documents clutched against his chest. They ran for the window, but more footsteps were pounding up the stairs. Too many. They'd never make it back to the balcony. Nate changed direction, pulling Catherine down a different hallway. Behind them, men shouted. A gunshot splintered the door frame beside Catherine's head. They burst through a door into what looked like a library, shelves of leather-bound books that Blackwell probably never read lining the walls. Nate slammed the door and shoved a heavy desk in front of it. That won't hold long, Catherine gasped. Doesn't have to. Nate was already at the far wall, running his hands along the paneling. Blackwell's paranoid. Showed me once when he was drunk. There's a passage, secret way out in case of fire or attack. It's here somewhere. Bodies slammed against the door. The desk scraped forward an inch. 2 inches. Nate, hurry! His fingers found something. A click. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing darkness beyond. Go! Catherine plunged into the passage, Nate right behind her, pulling the shelf closed just as the library door burst open. She heard muffled cursing on the other side, furniture being overturned. But they hadn't seen the passage close. The darkness was absolute. Catherine couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. She felt Nate's hand on her shoulder, guiding her forward. Stairs, he whispered. Watch your step. They descended carefully, the stone steps worn smooth by decades of use. The passage smelled of earth and old stone, reminding Catherine of the convent's root cellar. How long ago that seemed now. How different she'd been. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, they saw a faint light ahead. The passage ended at a wooden door, slightly ajar. Beyond it, Catherine could see grass and moonlight. They emerged into a small ravine behind Blackwell's property, hidden from the house by a stand of pine trees. From the hilltop came shouts and the glow of lanterns as guards searched the grounds. We need to get these documents to Brooks, Nate said, clutching the bag, for Blackwell realizes what we took and comes after us. They ran through the darkness, keeping low, using every shadow. Catherine's lungs burned, her legs ached, but she kept moving, driven by the knowledge that in Nate's bag might be the proof they needed to end this. Marshal Brooks' temporary office, set up in the back of the general store after the fire, was dark when they arrived. Catherine pounded on the door until a sleepy-looking Brooks appeared, gun in hand. His eyes widened when he saw them, disheveled and breathing hard. Please tell me you didn't do what I think you did. Hypothetically, Nate said, shoving the bag at him, if someone broke into Blackwell's house and took these from his safe, you'd want to look at them, right? Brooks took the bag, his expression torn between exasperation and hope. He dumped the contents onto his makeshift desk. Ledgers, letters, financial records. He began reading, his face growing darker with each page. This is it, he breathed. This is everything. Payments to Murphy going back 8 years, orders for specific jobs. Even a letter from Judge Henderson discussing how to handle troublesome witnesses. He looked up at them, something like awe in his expression. You did it. This will bury him. If we can keep it safe, Catherine said. He knows we were there. He'll come for the ease. Then we don't wait for him to make the first move. Brooks was already pulling on his coat. I'm waking up the telegrapher, sending copies of the most damning documents to the state capitol tonight. Even if Blackwell destroys the originals, the governor will have the evidence. He'll kill the telegrapher to stop the transmission, Nate warned. Not if we protect him. Sister, wake up Ezra Stone and anyone else you trust. Tell them to arm themselves and meet at the telegraph office. We're making our stand there. Within an hour, 15 people had gathered at Springfield Hollow's small telegraph office. Ezra Stone, his wife, Doc Hayes, several miners and their wives, even Reverend Thomas with an old shotgun that probably hadn't been fired in 20 years. They barricaded the doors and windows while the telegrapher, a nervous young man named Peter Collins, began transmitting. Catherine watched him work, the key clicking rapidly, sending their evidence dot and dash across the wires to the state capitol. It seemed such a fragile defense against Blackwell's wealth and violence. But it was all they had. How long? Brooks asked. 20 minutes for the critical documents. Another hour for everything else. We might not have an hour. He was right. 15 minutes into the transmission, horses thundered down Main Street. Catherine counted at least 20 riders, all armed. At their head rode Gideon Blackwell, his face a mask of cold fury. They stopped in front of the telegraph office. Blackwell dismounted slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly in the night air. Marshal Brooks, I know you're in there. I know what you have. You have one chance to give it back and walk away. Brooks opened the second-story window. Can't do that, Blackwell. This is evidence of multiple murders. It's going to the governor. The governor is a week away and I'm right here with 20 armed men. You've got, what, a dozen shopkeepers and a nun? This is over. Come out now and I'll let you live. We both know that's a lie. Blackwell's expression hardened. Then you'll die, all of you. And for what? You think anyone will care about some dead miners? This town belongs to me. These people belong to me. You're just delaying the inevitable. Inside the telegraph office, Peter Collins kept transmitting, his hands shaking but steady on the key. Click, click, click. Each pulse sending another piece of evidence beyond Blackwell's reach. Catherine moved to stand beside Brooks at the window. You're wrong, Mr. Blackwell. This town doesn't belong to you. These people don't belong to you. They belong to themselves, and they're choosing right here and now to stand for what's right instead of what's easy. Pretty speech, sister. Let's see if you still believe it when my men start shooting. If you do that, Nate called out, appearing at another window. Every witness here will testify. You'll hang for sure. Right now you've got a chance. Surrender. Face trial. Maybe your lawyers can get you life instead of the rope. I'm not going to prison. Blackwell's hand moved toward his gun. And I'm done talking. You have 60 seconds to come out or we're coming in. The people inside the telegraph office looked at each other. Catherine saw fear on every face. These weren't fighters. They were ordinary people who'd found extraordinary courage. But courage might not be enough against 20 guns. Ezra Stone checked his rifle. Well, I always wondered how I'd die. Guess I'm about to find out. Nobody has to die, Brooks said. Blackwell, your men. You really want to commit mass murder in front of 20 witnesses? Because that's what this will be. We're not coming out. You want these documents, you'll have to come through us. And even if you kill us all, the evidence is already on its way to the Capitol. It's over. You just don't know it yet. Blackwell's face twisted with rage. Kill them. Kill them all. His men raised their weapons. And then, from the darkness at the end of Main Street, came the sound of more horses. Many more. Everyone turned to look. A column of riders appeared, at least 30 of them. At their head rode a man in a black suit with a silver star pinned to his chest. A U.S. Marshal's star. Nobody fires a shot, the man's voice boomed across the street. This is U.S. Marshal William Garrett. By order of the territorial governor, I'm placing Gideon Blackwell under arrest. Blackwell stared in disbelief. That's impossible. I destroyed those telegrams. I paid the telegrapher to... You paid Peter Collins' brother, James, Garrett said, dismounting. Who took your money and told Peter everything? Peter's been sending us reports on your activities for 6 months. We've just been waiting for enough evidence to make charges stick. I'd say mass murder attempt in front of 36 witnesses ought to do it. Inside the telegraph office, Peter Collins grinned and gave Catherine a thumbs up. She almost laughed. The scared young telegrapher had been working against Blackwell all along. Blackwell's men were already lowering their weapons, seeing which way the wind was blowing. No one wanted to die for a lost cause. You can't prove anything, Blackwell said, but his voice lacked conviction. Marshal Garrett gestured to one of his deputies, who held up a folder. We have 6 months of reports. We have the documents Marshal Brooks sent tonight. We have testimony from Jack Murphy, who's been very cooperative since realizing you tried to kill him in that fire. And now we have attempted murder of federal witnesses. He smiled without warmth. Oh, we can prove plenty. Blackwell seemed to deflate, years of arrogance and power crumbling in an instant. When the deputies moved to handcuff him, he didn't resist. As they led him away, he caught sight of Catherine in the window. You, he said, this is all because of you. No, Catherine replied quietly. This is because of you, because of every life you destroyed, every family you broke, every man you killed for profit. I just made sure the truth finally came out. Blackwell spat at her feet and was dragged away. The siege was over. People began emerging from the telegraph office, exhaustion and relief written on every face. Brooks shook Marshal Garrett's hand. How did you get here so fast? We only started sending those documents an hour ago. We were already on our way. Got Peter's message yesterday that things were coming to a head. Rode hard to get here in time. Garrett looked around at the assembled townspeople. You folks did good. Stood up when it mattered. The territory needs more people like you. As the federal marshals processed prisoners and took statements, Catherine found herself sitting on the telegraph office steps, watching the sky lighten with approaching dawn. Her whole body ached. Her mind felt numb. Nate sat down beside her, careful to leave a respectful distance between them. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Catherine said, "Is it really over?" The fighting is. The trials will take months, maybe years. But Blackwell's done. His empire's broken. The mine will be seized by the territory, new management brought in. Things will change. At what cost? Catherine thought of the man she'd shot, the guard who'd probably live but would carry her bullet for the rest of his life. Thought of the wolf she'd killed. Thought of all the lines she'd crossed. Who am I now, Nate? I'm not the woman who left the convent a week ago. No, you're better, stronger. You faced evil and didn't blink. You saved lives, including mine. I also took life, or came close enough. Nate was quiet for a moment. I can't tell you who you are, Sister Kate. Only you can decide that. But I can tell you what I see. I see a woman who chose justice over safety, who chose courage over comfort, who proved that faith isn't just about prayers and hymns. Sometimes it's about standing in the darkness and refusing to let it win. Tears ran down Catherine's face. She was too tired to stop them. I don't know if I can go back to the convent, to that life thou eyes. Then don't. Find a new life, one that fits who you've become. What will you do, she asked, when they try you for the O'Malley killings? Nate's expression was calm, accepting. Face it. Tell the truth. Accept whatever comes. For the first time in 6 years, I'm not running. That's worth something. Marshal Garrett approached them, his face thoughtful. Hartwell, I need to speak with you about your legal situation. Nate stood. I understand. I'm ready. Actually, based on the testimony we've collected and the evidence from Blackwell's files, it's clear you were following orders. You're guilty of being present, maybe of poor judgment, but the actual killings were done by other men, most of whom are already dead or disappeared. Murphy's willing to testify that Blackwell gave specific kill orders, which you refused. That's not entirely accurate, Nate said carefully. It's accurate enough. Look, Hartwell, I've been a lawman for 20 years. I know the difference between a killer and a man who made mistakes. You made mistakes, bad ones. But you've also spent 6 years punishing yourself and then risked everything to bring down Blackwell. In my book, that counts for something. What are you saying? I'm saying the territorial prosecutor is willing to offer a deal. You testify against Blackwell and everyone else involved in his operation. In exchange, time served in the form of your 6 years in exile, plus 2 years probation. No jail time. Nate stared at him. Why would you do that? Because we need men who know the difference between justice and revenge. Because this territory is trying to become civilized, and we need people willing to stand up for what's right, even when it costs them. Garrett extended his hand. What do you say? Nate looked at Catherine. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face but smiling now, really smiling. He shook Garrett's hand. I say yes, and thank you. As the sun rose fully over Springfield Hollow, painting the mountains gold and pink, the townspeople began to disperse. Families reunited. Children who'd been hidden away came running. The long night was over. Rebecca found Catherine and hugged her fiercely. Thank you. Thank you for everything. For saving Danny, for fighting for us, for refusing to give up. Danny, looking much healthier now, tugged on Catherine's sleeve. Sister Kate, are you still going to be a nun? Catherine knelt down to his eye level. I don't know, sweetheart. I think maybe I'm meant for a different kind of service now. Like what? I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out. As they talked, a rider appeared from the direction of the convent. Sister Agnes, one of the older nuns, dismounted and rushed to Catherine. Mother Beatrice sent me the moment we heard what happened. Are you all right? I'm alive. We all are. Praise God. Sister Agnes hesitated. Mother wants to know when you are coming home. The question hung in the air. Catherine looked around at the town, at the people who'd stood with her, at Nate talking quietly with Marshall Garrett. She thought of the convent, its quiet halls and peaceful routine. Thought of the woman she'd been a week ago, kneeling in prayer, seeking answers. She'd found answers, just not the ones she'd expected. Tell Mother Beatrice I love her, Catherine said slowly. Tell her I'll always be grateful for everything she taught me. But tell her I can't come back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There's work to be done here. People who need help. Justice that still needs serving. Sister Agnes looked sad but not surprised. She said you might say that. She also said to tell you that serving God takes many forms, and she's proud of you, no matter what path you choose. After Sister Agnes left, Catherine found herself alone again on the telegraph office steps. The town was waking up properly now, people emerging to survey the damage from the night's standoff. Amazingly, no one had died. A few injuries, some property damage, but everyone was alive. It felt like a miracle. Ezra Stone approached, his wife beside him. Sister Catherine, we've been talking. Springfield Hollow needs a school, a real one, not just parents teaching their children when they have time. We need someone to run it, someone the community trusts. I'm not a teacher. You're educated, you're brave, you care about people. That's more than most teachers have. Mrs. Stone smiled. Besides, you've already proven you can handle a classroom full of rowdy children. After facing down Blackwell, a few fidgety students should be easy. Catherine found herself laughing, actually laughing. I suppose that's true. Think about it, Ezra said. No rush, but the offer stands. As they walked away, Nate returned and sat beside her again. They offered you the school? How did you know? Ezra mentioned it to me last night, asked if I thought you'd accept. What did you tell him? That you were full of surprises and he should ask you himself. Nate paused. For what it's worth, I think you'd be a great teacher. And what about you? What will you do with your freedom? Marshall Garrett offered me a job. Deputy U.S. Marshal. Says I know the territory, know the criminals, and apparently I'm handy in a fight. Will you take it? I don't know. Part of me wants to go back to the mountains, back to the simple life. But another part, he trailed off, looking at her. Another part? Catherine prompted. Another part thinks maybe I've been alone long enough. Maybe it's time to be part of something again. Part of a community, part of... He stopped, seeming to realize he was saying too much. Catherine's heart was beating faster. She wasn't naive. She knew what he was suggesting, what he wasn't quite saying, and the truth was, she felt it too. This connection between them, forged in fire and blood and shared purpose. But it was too soon, too raw, too complicated. Nate, she said gently, I need time to figure out who I am now, what I want, what I believe. I understand. But, she continued, if you were to take that deputy marshal job, and if I were to accept the position at the school, we'd both be staying in Springfield Hollow. We'd see each other. We could get to know each other properly, without anyone shooting at us. A slow smile spread across Nate's face. I'd like that, Sister Kate. Just Kate now, I think. Kate, then. They sat together as the town came fully awake around them, watching the future unfold one sunrise at a time. 6 months had passed since the night Gideon Blackwell was led away in chains. Summer had come to the Ozarks, turning the mountains green and filling the valleys with wildflowers. Springfield Hollow had changed in ways both visible and subtle. The mine operated under new management now, a cooperative owned partly by the territory and partly by the miners themselves. Safety standards had been implemented, fair wages paid. There hadn't been a single accident in 4 months, a record that would have been impossible under Blackwell's rule. The town itself seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. People walked straighter, smiled more. The fear that had hung over everything for so long had finally dissipated. Kate O'Malley stood at the window of the small schoolhouse, watching her students play in the yard during recess. 23 children, ranging from 6 to 14, children of miners and shopkeepers and farmers. She'd been teaching them for 5 months now, and to her surprise, she loved it. "Miss O'Malley!" Danny Walsh came running up, his leg fully healed, barely even a limp remaining. "Tommy Chen said the earth goes around the sun, but I said the sun goes around the earth. Who's right?" Kate smiled. "What do you think, Danny? What does the evidence suggest?" "Well, it looks like the sun moves." "It does, but sometimes what we see isn't the whole truth. Come inside and I'll show you something." She gathered the children and used an apple and a candle to demonstrate planetary motion, watching their faces lighted up with understanding. This was her calling now, she'd realized. Not prayers in a quiet chapel, but helping young minds grow and question and learn. After school ended, Kate tidied the classroom and prepared lessons for tomorrow. She was halfway through writing out arithmetic problems when a knock came at the door. Nate Hartwell stood in the doorway, his deputy marshal badge gleaming on his chest. He'd filled out some since taking the job, no longer carrying the gaunt, haunted look of a man slowly dying. His beard was neatly trimmed now, his eyes clear. "Deputy Hartwell," Kate said, unable to keep from smiling. "What brings you by?" "Official business." But his eyes were warm. "Marshal Garrett needs someone to ride him out to the Henderson place tomorrow. Some dispute about property boundaries. Wondered if you'd like to come along. Purely educational, of course. Show you how we handle civil matters." "Of course, purely educational." Kate set down her chalk. "What time?" "Dawn. We'll be back by afternoon." They'd fallen into this pattern over the past months. Careful, respectful, taking their time. Nate would find excuses to stop by the schoolhouse. Kate would find reasons to visit the marshal's office. They'd have dinner at the hotel restaurant, always in public, always proper. But something was building between them, something neither of them had quite put into words yet. "I'll be ready," Kate said. After Nate left, Kate walked to the small house she'd rented on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms, but it was hers. Her independence, her new life. Rebecca Walsh was waiting on the porch, a basket beside her. "Brought you some preserves and fresh bread. Danny helped make the bread, so it's a little lumpy, but it tastes good." "Thank you." Kate invited her in, put on water for tea. "How is he?" "Growing like a weed, happy, safe." Rebecca's eyes misted. "Because of you. Because we all stood together." "No, Kate, because you refused to stay silent. You started this. The rest of us just followed." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking tea. Rebecca had remarried a month ago, a kind widower who worked at the mine. Danny had a new father and seemed to be thriving. Some stories, Kate thought, actually got happy endings. After Rebecca left, Kate sat alone in her small house and allowed herself to think about Nate, about the way he looked at her, the careful distance he maintained, as if afraid she might break, the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to her students. He was a good man who'd done bad things. She was a former nun who discovered she had a warrior's heart. Together they were something neither of them quite understood yet. But they had time. For the first time in either of their lives, they had time. The trial had concluded 3 weeks ago in the territorial capital. Kate had testified, as had Nate, Danny, Jack Murphy, and a dozen others. The proceedings took 8 days. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Gideon Blackwell was sentenced to life in prison for multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder. Jack Murphy got 15 years. Several other members of Blackwell's organization received various sentences. Judge Henderson had resigned in disgrace, fleeing to parts unknown rather than face charges. Kate had sat in the courtroom and watched justice finally being served. Her father's death had been officially acknowledged as murder, not an accident. The other victims were recognized. Their families were vindicated. It didn't bring anyone back, but it mattered. The next morning, Kate was up before dawn, dressed in riding clothes, her hair braided and pinned up. She'd become quite comfortable in men's work clothes over the past months, much to the scandal of some of the older townswomen. But practicality mattered more than propriety when you were building a new life. Nate arrived on horseback, leading a gentle mare for Kate. "Morning, you ready?" "Always." They rode out of town as the sun rose, painting the mountains in shades of gold and rose. The Henderson property was about 10 miles north, an easy ride on a beautiful summer morning. As they traveled, they talked. About small things mostly. The school, Nate's work, town gossip. But underneath the ordinary conversation ran a current of something deeper. "Can I ask you something?" Nate said as they crossed a meadow full of black-eyed Susans. "Of course." "Do you ever regret it, leaving the convent?" Kate thought about this. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity, the quiet, the certainty of that life. But no, I don't regret it. I needed to leave to become who I was meant to be." "And who's that?" "I'm still figuring it out." She looked at him. "What about you? Do you regret taking the marshal job instead of going back to your cabin?" "Every day I'm grateful I didn't go back. That cabin was a tomb. I was burying myself alive up there." Nate paused. "Being here, being part of things again, helping people instead of hiding from them, it's like being given a second life. You earned it. We both did." They reached the Henderson property by mid-morning. The dispute was minor, quickly resolved with some patient listening and common sense. On the ride back, they stopped by a creek to water the horses and rest. Kate sat on a smooth rock, trailing her fingers in the cool water. Nate stood nearby, ostensibly watching the horses, but she could feel his attention on her. "Kate," he said finally, "I need to tell you something." She looked up. His expression was serious, almost nervous. This was more than casual conversation. "I'm listening." "These past 6 months have been the best of my life. Being here, working for something good, seeing you every day, watching you with those children, seeing you smile. It's everything I thought I'd lost the right to have." Kate's heart was beating faster. "But I'm also aware," Nate continued, "of who I am, what I've done. I know I'm not worthy of someone like you. I know that whatever I feel, I have no right to burden you with it." "Nate, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed you to know that you changed my life. You saved it, really, and whatever happens, wherever life takes us, I'll always be grateful." Kate stood, walked over to him. "Nathaniel Hartwell, for a smart man, you can be remarkably dense sometimes." He blinked, confused. "You think I don't know what you feel? You think I haven't noticed the way you look at me? The excuses you make to see me?" She smiled. "I'm not blind. I didn't want to presume. And I appreciate that, but here's what you need to understand." Kate took his hand. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact, and she felt him go very still. "6 months ago, I was a woman who'd never questioned her path, who thought faith meant obedience and service meant silence. But you showed me different. You showed me that faith can be fierce, that service sometimes means fighting, that the most godly thing we can do is stand up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. Kate, I'm not the same woman who left that convent. I shot people, Nate. I broke laws. I crossed lines I never thought I'd cross. And yes, sometimes that haunts me, but I did it for the right reasons. We both did." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that we're both broken people who found a way to put ourselves back together. We're both trying to build new lives from the ashes of our old ones. And maybe, just maybe, we could do that together." Nate's eyes were bright with emotion. "Are you sure?" "Because once I let myself hope, once I let myself believe this could be real, I don't know if I could bear losing it." "I'm sure." And she was. Standing there by the creek, holding his hand, Kate felt more certain than she'd felt about anything in years. "I'm not promising it will be easy. We both have histories. I'm still figuring out who I am now. You're still earning back the trust you lost, but we can figure it out together." "Together," Nate repeated as if testing the word. Then slowly, carefully, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "I'd like that very much." They stood there for a long moment. the summer sun warm on their faces, the creek babbling at their feet. It wasn't a passionate embrace, wasn't a dramatic declaration. It was something quieter, more profound. It was two people choosing each other, choosing hope, choosing to believe that the future could be better than the past. When they finally remounted and continued back to Springfield Hollow, something had shifted between them. An understanding had been reached, a promise made, even if the details remained unspoken. They rode into town as the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. People were out enjoying the summer evening. Children played in the street. Somewhere a fiddle was playing. Kate saw Ezra Stone outside his shop, saw him notice her and Nate riding together and smile knowingly, saw Mrs. Stone elbow him and whisper something. The town was going to talk. Kate found she didn't care. Let them talk. Let them speculate. She'd face down worse than gossip. I should get you home, Nate said as they approached Kate's house. People will talk if I keep you out after dark. People are going to talk anyway. True. He dismounted and helped her down, his hands steady on her waist. Kate, about what we discussed today. Yes? Can we take it slow? I want to do this right. Court you properly. Give people time to accept the idea of us. Kate smiled. I think that's wise. Besides, I'm in no rush. We have time. We do. The wonder in his voice made her heart ache. We actually do. He walked her to her door, tipped his hat, and rode away. Kate stood on her porch watching him go, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The summer passed into autumn. The school year continued. Kate's students flourished. Nate worked his cases, earning respect and trust throughout the territory. And slowly, carefully, they built something together. Sunday dinners at the hotel became their tradition. Walks after church, quiet conversations on Kate's porch. The town watched, gossiped, and gradually accepted. The former nun and the redeemed gunman. It was an unusual pairing, but this was an unusual time. One October evening, as the leaves were turning gold and red, they sat on Kate's porch watching the sunset. Nate reached over and took her hand. I got a letter today, he said, from Marshall Garrett. He's retiring, wants to recommend me as his replacement. Marshall Hartwell. That has a nice ring to it. It's a big responsibility. The whole territory. I'd have to travel more. Be gone sometimes. I know. But I'd always come back. To Springfield. To you. Kate squeezed his hand. I know that too. There's something else. Nate seemed nervous now. If I take the job, I'd need to settle down properly. Establish a real home. And I was thinking, maybe in a year or so, if you were willing, we could... Are you trying to propose, Nate Hartwell? He laughed, the sound still surprising and wonderful after so many years of silence. Not yet, not properly. But I'm thinking about it. Thought you should know. Good. Kate leaned her head on his shoulder. Because I'm thinking about it too. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out. From the schoolhouse, Kate could hear children's voices, some of her students playing one last game before dark. From the town came the sounds of life continuing. Music, laughter, the ordinary sounds of a community at peace. Do you think about them? Kate asked quietly. The people we lost, your victims, my father. Every day. Me too. She was quiet for a moment. But I also think they'd want us to live, to be happy, to make something good from all that pain. I hope so. Nate's voice was rough with emotion. I hope they'd forgive us for moving on. I think they would. I think that's what redemption means. Not forgetting, not pretending it didn't happen, but choosing to build something better anyway. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, a stubborn mountain man who saved my life and taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. Nate pulled her closer. I love you, Kate O'Malley. It was the first time either of them had said the words aloud. Kate felt them settle into her heart like a key finding its lock. I love you too. They sat together as night fell completely over Springfield Hollow, two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen light. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, questions to answer, battles yet to fight. But for now, in this moment, on this porch, under these stars, Everything was exactly as it should be. A year later, on a crisp autumn morning very much like that evening, Kate O'Malley and Nate Hartwell stood before Reverend Thomas in the small church where everything had changed. The same church where truth had been spoken, where justice had begun. Now it bore witness to something else, a beginning instead of an ending. Kate wore cream with wildflowers. Nate wore his marshal's badge. The church was packed with miners and their families. Townspeople, Rebecca and Danny in the front row, Doc Hayes, Ezra and Mrs. Stone, even Marshall Garrett, who'd come out of retirement for the occasion. And in the back, by special arrangement, several nuns from St. Agnes Convent, Mother Beatrice in the center, her old face wreathed in smiles. As Reverend Thomas began the ceremony, Kate looked at Nate and saw her future, saw the children they might have, the life they would build, the good they could do together. But she also saw the past, saw her father's face, saw the girl she'd been, kneeling in prayer, seeking answers, saw the journey that had brought her here, through darkness and blood and fear, and finally into light. Do you, Catherine Mary O'Malley, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Kate smiled. I do. And do you, Nathaniel James Hartwell, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Nate's voice was strong, sure. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Nate kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. The congregation erupted in applause. As they walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, Kate caught Mother Beatrice's eye. The old nun nodded once, a blessing and a benediction. You chose your path, child, and it was the right one. Outside, the October sun was brilliant. Leaves danced in the wind. Children threw rice and laughed. The celebration would continue at the hotel with food and music and dancing. But for a moment, Kate and Nate stood together at the church steps, looking out at the town they'd helped save, the community they'd become part of, the life they'd built from ashes. Ready? Nate asked. Kate took his hand. For what? Everything. The future. Whatever comes next. She smiled, squeezed his hand, and together they stepped forward into their tomorrow. Behind them, the church bells began to ring, their sound carrying across the valley, across the mountains, a song of hope and redemption, and the promise that even broken things could be made whole again. They had believed. They had fought, and together they had won. And this, right here, right now, was their reward. Not perfection, not a life without struggle, but a chance, a second chance to get it right. Together they walked into that chance, into that future, into the rest of their lives. And somewhere, watching from whatever lay beyond, perhaps the ghosts of those they'd lost were smiling too.